AHC Rotary. Morning. So, as you can tell, Bobby is not here with us this morning. He was in Florida, sunny Florida yesterday, and I think he's in New York City this morning. So I get to fill in for him. So, invocation and pledge. I see that Darlene is here.
Hey,
I'm the backup for you. All right, Chris.
that's okay. I'm getting everybody in the game anyway. If y'all can stand up, let's all recite the Lord's Prayer together.
With the trespassers or the dead?
Our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Of the things we think, say, and do,
Is it truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Wow.
Et cetera, et cetera.
Good job, Chris. Thank you.
Sergeant at Arms, you have reports?
Well, kind of sorts. It's Dale, the first time I've ever done it, and I showed up kind of blind. I'm scribbling stuff all over the place, so I apologize for errors and omissions. Got a visitor from Deborah Freeman. I forgot which club she was from. Summit, and Sean Roberts is a guest of Chip and Kelly. Steve Holland, he slipped in there. I was a guest over here.
Friend of mine. He's a good friend of neighbor. His daughter is applying for the Rotary Youth Leadership Program this summer, so he's well aware of Rotary and what we do. He's got 2 children that have already been there. With 2 older kids, so this is his 3rd one. So try not to break the chain. He's going to be flying through our club.
Did I miss any guests? And I'm repeating what my understanding is from last week. There was no school today, so this isn't an official meeting. So, but it's a makeup if you attended, but you need to go log it yourself. So log your makeup for today if you need it. Okay, is that right? Good.
So yeah, you need to make up, today, go online and do it. If you're not in attendance, we're not going to know that.
And if you're not here, you can also go online and watch the video.
There you go. So if you miss it,
So for all you that aren't here. All right.
you have to go put on makeup. You don't.
Any other announcements?
I don't know what not to do.
Oh, you got it.
Okay.
We're going to, I'll probably say again next week. Next, in the month of February, we're going to pick a Tuesday or Wednesday to go to Buster's to do a 5:45. And I know the lift, I already told them, I said we're going to hide the forklift. That's not part of this joke. I promise you.
I wanted to have forklift racing.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we can do that. I'm going to disqualify.
Good insurance.
I'll be announcing it via email in the next couple of meetings, but we're going to do that in February and try to institute that and implement it with different businesses. If you're welcome our Rotary Club to come to a 5:45 for makeup, please let me know if your office would do something like that. Thanks, guys.
All right, so what I heard was forklift racing and Buster's and
Is that before or after the
I will send the email.
I was going to say, is that before or after the beer?
It's all alcohol and racing.
All right.
It's like NASCAR.
All right, any other announcements? All right, birthdays and anniversaries.
We've got a few birthdays here. We've got on the 29th was Dennis Marcotte. On the 31st, Dr. David Crabtree. We have Rotary anniversaries. 2 people for 8 years. Dennis again, and then Marlee Foster. I've got Chip for 22 years, and Lawrence Mann has 43 years with Rotary. And that's all on February 1st. wedding anniversaries I have is Charles and Sandy Lannigan.
All right.
Happy dollars?
Already?
Yeah, this is for Howard Drigger's car warming up, waking me up this morning.
Seriously?
Get out of bed, you got ready.
Man, how warm was that car?
Or was it in your driveway? Was that, Chip?
Well, if I'd had email 22 years ago, I would have sent out an announcement. My oldest son was born 22 years ago, right about now. So we are so excited to celebrate his birthday. But what could be better than celebrating a birthday and coming home to your home city? He's up at App. He's coming in with the basketball team, and he's the co-manager of the basketball team. So he'll get to celebrate his birthday in town at a basketball game, and he'll be running the camera. So if you wave up to, if you're at the game tonight, go ahead and wave up to the camera booth.
I got two. One is for 7 or 8 days, we had the kids and the grandkids staying with us, and they finally departed, and they're off to Norfolk. They left right before the snowstorm, so that'll be hopefully his last duty station, and he'll be able to retire in 3 years with 23 and a half years, and then off to the next great career. And the second one is for Deborah. I think we need to get her a badge, because she actually has better attendance here than a lot of our members.
Zin.
Do I get change from you for?
Yeah, sure.
You owe me $20, so I'm not paying you now.
Well, happy dollar to you too.
Okay, so I know everybody's been wondering, I was gone for so long, how was the school, right? Well, as considering that I told a little white lie, I actually took almost 30 college credits last semester. I ended up with only A's and B's. I got a C in biology, but I blame that because my professor hates me.
That's what happened to me.
It teaches chemistry.
That is true, because I've never been to a school before where I've never been encouraged to think for myself. In my biology, I answered a question that says, polylysed adenine tail, don't worry about what it means. The point is, because he said poly A tail in class, he wants me to write poly A tail. Poly A tail is just a short form of polylysed adenine tail. And I didn't understand that. And I questioned everything he says. So I ended up with a C. Finally, I got really, really upset, and I told him that I know people, and I'm going to get another professor to take a look at my papers. Eventually, I was so upset, I met with the vice president of instructions, and I brought all my papers. What he doesn't like cameras in class, no picture taking equipment, no cell phone. What he didn't realize is that every time he gives me my question papers to look at, I pull my camera out as soon as he turns, and I take a picture of the best student in the class. I take a picture of their paper. So I submitted all of this to the vice president of instructions. And last week, I was informed that I have a B in coming to Rotary meetings late. I'm really, really trying. My psychology professor is at 7 a.m. He says so long as I bring my assignments to him before class starts, I can go to Rotary. That means I'm going to have to keep being late, but I do love coming here.
All right.
I'm happy this morning that I'm not Zen's professor.
Last Friday afternoon at about 3:45, I sent out a rather cryptic email to everybody inviting you to come to Green Valley and celebrate with Carrie and I. That
we'd driven a stake through the vampire's heart. The vampire was SunTrust Bank. And 2.5 years ago, they put us in what's known as an orphan loan status, whereby you got to move your loan out of here. Never missed a payment, never a day late, nothing like that. But as soon as they do that, when you go to another bank, say you're with SunTrust, why do you want to refinance over here instead of over there? Bank says, sorry, we don't know what kind of problems they have, and immediately you can't refinance. So that, a deadbeat partner, some good advice from Chris. Where's Ross? Is Ross here? Ross Geller and Gunnar Froman helped us through this. And finally, Tom Nelson's Bank of North Carolina, got rid of the partner, got rid of SunTrust. It's all ours. Vampire's dead.
All right.
I was afraid of the vampire.
Well, I think mine's Happy Dollar. I was asked to be vice chair at the High Point Chamber of Commerce. I took that as an honor, and also chair-elect at the High Point United Way. And I'm thinking, man, that's a lot to do, but man, after serving as Rotary president, I figure I can do anything.
So mine's just quick. I haven't even seen this, but apparently my daughter was in the Kernersville News the other day for the groundbreaking of our school's new facilities. So I can only afford $1 right now, so I wanted to say it before someone else called me on the carpet. So I haven't seen it yet, but I heard yesterday.
Yeah, I was gonna. We were on that.
Okay. Hey, we live high and large on big newspapers.
We were at our table this morning. Tom was talking about how he courted his wife throughout. That he knew her since she was young, and he was trying to catch up with her and couldn't. And at the table, he sort of laughed and said, "Why didn't you look her up on Facebook?" And it reminded. This is when they were young, before Facebook. And it reminded me of Grandpa talking about. We were talking about Google and everything. He said, "Yeah, you know, it used to be when we were young, and we'd all be sitting around, and somebody would say, you know, here's a subject I'd really like to learn a little bit more about." And the response was, "That's a damn shame." Before Google.
So you keep that till next week. All right, well, we're so pleased to have with us today Rebecca Byerly, who did drive down from New York last night and had a harrowing journey, I guess, at least the second half. And informed me that she got here to Greensboro at 4 a.m., so...
3:20.
3:20.
Sometime after that, I will do that.
Sometime after that. So we're thrilled to have her here. I'm excited to see all of you come out to hear Rebecca. Many of you may remember she's an ambassadorial scholar from this district. And even Buster was telling me this morning she worked on that committee and got to interview Rebecca and how clear it was when she came in and met with them that she was going to be one of the choices. So, you know, we're excited to hear what you're up to now, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. All right. I do feel like I've had an all-night party. Unfortunately, it didn't involve any alcohol, no dancing. It was a missed train in New York, a dead battery in D.C., and sweet-talking a cop in D.C. to please jumpstart my car. But I made it here. I knew that I would. I knew that there was no way I wouldn't make it this morning. And since really the theme of today's talk is resilience and courage, what's a dead battery? So I have been coming here since I was 18, a senior at Southeast Guilford High School. And the first time I came to Gate City, I was talking about drug and alcohol awareness. I'm not sure, do you still have this scholarship now?
Yep, sure do.
So that was my first experience with Rotary. And ended up doing well with that scholarship and went to the district conference that was in New Bern that year. And it was just a great experience to meet people who were doing tremendous things in the world. And it also planted a seed, and that seed was, one day I'm going to be a Rotary Ambassadorial Scholar. I had no idea how I was going to do that. I had no idea where I was going to go, but I just knew it was going to happen. But before that happened, I went to American University, majored in peace and conflict resolution with a focus in Arabic studies and Islamic studies. This was right after 9/11, so I was really keen to learn Arabic, understand Islam, and move to the Middle East. And I was very fortunate that when I was a sophomore at American University, I applied for a Boren National Security Scholarship, which funded me to go to Egypt for a full year and learn Arabic and really understand a part of the world we know so little about sitting right here. And so at 20 and 21, I was in Yemen, I was in Sudan and Palestine, learning about people and places that I really never knew existed. And a theme started to emerge. And that theme was the empowerment of women and how important that is. You give them an inch and they'll go 10,000 miles with it. And I can just tell you countless examples of seeing that. You know, seeing that in Egypt when a woman had the opportunity to work and she would just suck in the whole community around whatever she was working on. And people like myself, you know, who was just a student from the United States, and she would, you know, anytime I had a free hour, she would want to learn English. You know, can you just spend 30 minutes with me? I just need to learn English because I need to make sure that my children know English, because if they're going to get out of here and get an education, that's where it starts. I mean, they caught on to the bigger picture. And so my senior year at American University, I decided, okay, it's time to apply for this Rotary Ambassadorial Scholarship. And though I didn't know it at the time, when I walked in the meeting, they were like, yeah, she's going to get it. I soon found out in April 2006 that I was going to be a Rotary Ambassadorial Scholar, and I just knew that would be the next chapter. Somehow, you know, that would take me from being that college student to being a woman who's in her career, which is a big difference in those two things. Before I went to India, though, I ended up going to Afghanistan and working there, and that was really a heartbreaking experience because you saw people working so hard to be in an environment that could ensure an education, where they could safely send their kids to school, and you kind of knew it's probably not going to work out so well. And unfortunately, I think we're now seeing the repercussions of, you know, the last 10 years. But what I saw in places like Afghanistan was this unbelievable resilience to get up every day and keep going and hope and work towards a better future. So when I got this fellowship to India, I was 23. I really didn't know much about India. And I booked a ticket to Delhi, somehow got an apartment, which was like actually in the servants' quarters of a middle-class neighborhood, frequented by monkeys who, I'm not kidding, would just go through the front. It was really hot. You know when it's 120 degrees and you don't have AC? It's kind of hot. And so you have to leave the doors open because you really feel like you're suffocating from the inside. I mean, it's a miserable feeling. I now have air conditioning, I'm happy to say. I've moved up in the world. So, you know, monkeys breaking in your house with like these huge teeth was just normal. And, you know, I think like when you kind of learn how to deal with these things, I did call the embassy the first time and said, look, I'm in America, DDA Flats, and I need you to send somebody now. And they're like, ma'am, we only help in emergencies. Like, this is an emergency, there's a monkey in the house. So I quickly learned the keywords of Hindi for get the monkey out of the house, and the neighbors would come to my rescue. So one of the things that happened when I was staying in India is that I went to Kashmir. Does anyone know where Kashmir is? Kashmir? So Kashmir is in northern India. It's actually China, Pakistan, and India claim this little piece of land way up in the Himalayas. And this happened during the partition, and then there was like a war in China. Took a chunk of it. And I go there. I was actually February 14th of 2008, and I realized this is it. Like this is the place where I'm going to start my career, because there's so many stories that need to be told, and there's nobody here. There was a brutal conflict in Kashmir for 20 years where, you know, an estimated, depending on what statistic you look at, 70,000 to 100,000 people were killed. More than that disappeared. And what happens with media is when, and I'm very sad to see this probably happen in Afghanistan, is when it's no longer in the news, we forget about it. And it doesn't mean that there's not a problem, we're just not covering it anymore. That's not where the budgets are. So well, thanks to you guys, I decided, yeah, I'm gonna go to this conflict zone and be a journalist. So, but I've never written before. I'm actually terrified to write. I don't know how to do this. But I have a lot of courage and resilience, and I know how to run. So I ended up writing a bunch of crazy stories which involved running the Great Wall of China Marathon, the Nomad Olympics in Mongolia, and I start pitching to everyone, including the Pleasant Garden Post, the Greensburg News and Record, the Charlotte Observer. Nobody calls me back. Except for this random person named Kevin Drew at CNN. And I had really thought it was a prank call. I really wanted to be like, hey, that's not funny. You know, I really want to write for CNN. That's not very nice. That's like telling, you know, like this guy likes you when he really doesn't. So anyways, it was legitimate, and CNN was like, well, you're a no-name kid, thanks. But we'll give you a shot. And you know, that's all it took was that tiny little foot in the door, and bam, it was wide open. So I ended up doing 4 stories for the CNN homepage in the 2008 Olympics in China. Come back to DC and hear about this crazy race in Libya. It's a 125-mile race. There's no Americans that have done it. There was I think one American had done it actually, but there was like, it was really difficult to get visas. But I actually happened to know my hairdresser was a Libyan fellow and knew the ambassador, so you knew, again, it's just like a little foot in the door, and bam, we've got a whole team of Americans going to Libya. So this is how I started building up my contacts so I could move to Kashmir. And I actually did a story for National Geographic. People ask, well, how do you get in with National Geographic? Well, you tell them you're going to run 125 miles in Libya, and I think if this kid lives, we're totally going to let her do this story. And so that's pretty much, you know, how it starts. Charlie Engle, I was with Chris on this experience, invited me to go to Badwater, and I covered this story for Voice of America and for Al Jazeera. And all of this mattered because I wanted to go to Kashmir, and I wanted to be a journalist, and I needed someone to write for. I needed a way to survive. So in 2009, in August of 2009, I got a Pulitzer crisis reporting grant, pack up my big bag, which consisted of a lot of nothing, and moved to Kashmir and lived with the Kashmiri family for many months on a houseboat. And again, it's just that consistent nose to the ground, I'm going to do this, and I want to know about these people's lives, because I want to share it with people. So that was really my second venture back to India. The first venture had been as a Rotary ambassadorial scholar, and coming back, I came back as a professional, as a journalist. And it has been such an unbelievable experience that just gets better all the time. And it gets better because you know you just simply cannot give up. I mean, there's some pretty bad days where you're a journalist in places like Kashmir, you know, covering very unpleasant stories. Last year's was people getting beheaded on the border with Pakistan. I mean, a bad day is a pretty bad day. But I think this work is important. But what I was beginning to understand was, though I love what I'm doing as a journalist, there is a greater message that I want to share. And that message is that we are not defined by anything. We are not defined by age. We are not defined by gender. We are not defined by culture. And we are not defined by the parameters we think society sets for us. So last April, my aunt actually had to take all of this back around. I had just gotten my first huge assignment with the New York Times. Work was great. I was really coming into my own, and I just said, you know what? This is great, but this just isn't the bigger message. And my aunt had actually just passed away from cancer, and she was horribly abused. Her husband's actually in jail for killing 2 people, and I realized, wow, this is a global message. This empowerment of women is not just a message that's pertinent to the Middle East and pertinent to South Asia. This is a global message. And I don't just want to tell this message, I want to inspire people to understand those things we just said, that we're not defined by anything. unless we decide that we are. And I had that card up my sleeve that I'm this semi-crazy runner. So I thought, what better way to tell this story than to produce and direct a film called Women of the Mountain, which is about the women who come from around the world to run some of the longest distances and some of the highest mountain ranges, and the real stakeholders of those places, who are the women who have been living in these difficult and fragile ecosystems for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So I had that idea the first week of April, and the third week of April. I'd flown in a videographer, and we were in Nepal on the first shoot. And that's where that resilience and that courage comes in, is when you believe in something, other people start believing in it too. And initially, you know, there was absolutely no funding. I had just, thank God, had a good year with work and dumped it into the film instead of paying my credit card bills. And I'm so glad that I did. And then other, like Mahmoud, a clothing company, came on board. And again, you know, when you're doing something like this, it's never been done before. It's hard to measure success. It's hard to really know, I don't know, is there even something here? But it wasn't long till we knew we had something really special. In July, there was a 135-mile race in Ladakh, which is, again, way up in the Himalayas. This is a race that touched 18,000 feet twice. And this is a time when the only thing you're hearing in the news coming out of India is how horrible it is to be a woman. And, well, quite frankly, it is. But there's also some pretty amazing things that women are doing in India that should be highlighted. So this race, in general style that I like to choose things in, it had never really been done before. So that means there's going to be huge room for things to go wrong, but that's all a great part of the story, or so I think. So there's 7 people in the race. There's 2 women, this Indian lady named Aparna and myself. And, you know, when we meet her, she's like this, like kind of stands like this, and she won't look at the camera. Her hands are always in her hair, and I'm like, God, you know, what are we going to do with her? She's exactly like what we don't want to show. And the race starts, and can you pull up the first film? And I'll just give you guys a clip of how it went down. Now, what you're about to see was a video that we did for Mama, who is the clothing company that sponsored our film. And you're not going to see the other side of the story, which is the unbelievable woman that we covered in India. You're going to see this runner and the story of what unfolded in this race. I'm only half expecting this to actually work. So if it doesn't pull up, I will immediately give you a blow-by-blow.
I ask these mountains for safe passage over their peaks, but safe passage does not always get you there on time.
Audio's working.
There you go.
So let's start with that. So I had a crew that came in with me, but we were literally shooting and editing these things in a day.
I ask these mountains for safe passage over their peaks, but safe passage does not always get you there on time.
So the date was 7/04/43. By 7/2/22, everyone should have actually come to North Korea. So right now we don't actually have 2 finishers, and the 2 runners are Aparna and Rebecca. But you know what? Hats off to them. They've done it so far. 48 kilometers at this altitude is equivalent to like more than 100 kilometers of range. So it's an amazing feat that they've done. Obviously, it's just not happening.
Okay, fine. Officially, it's not happening. So we just mark that against the name that officially didn't happen.
I mean, this is a problem. Should I not stop here anyways, right?
What defines us out here is not how fast we finish, but how we adapt when the unexpected happens. journey of supporting Aparna through hers had just begun. She pushed through 222 kilometers over 2 mountain ranges that are nearly 6,000 meters high.
I don't know that we would have had this much fun if we had been disqualified. Yeah, then it would have become competitive. Yeah. I know your time. I know which body part is hurting.
Phenomenal.
We just finished 220 miles. How does it feel? Yeah, how you doing? You just about everything. It is, of course, I mean, by Monday things will be back to normal, but till then Monday doesn't come.
This is an experience I know will get me to the finish line of the Swiss Iron Trail.
So that's Aparna. She misses the first time cutoff by 6 minutes. She looks at the race direction, she says, that's fine, but I have to finish this race. And she goes on to run 105 miles by herself, there's no support, under the 60-hour cutoff. And those are the stories we want to tell with Women of the Mountain. You know, it's such a beautiful message for young people that, you know, sometimes things in life, they don't go as planned, but it's how you respond to that when it happens. And for someone like Aparna, it's saying, hey, I might have been born in India, and people might tell me I can't run. And this might be completely against the norms of the place I'm living, but I'm going to do this. And I bet if I do this, more people are going to do this after me. Finless is the woman we're covering in Ladakh. And I actually heard about her from some awesome girlfriends I have in India who were like, Rebecca, there's this lady. She grew up herding goats in the mountains. She wanted to be a mountain guide. Even though she was certified, wasn't allowed to be because she's a woman. So she started her own mountain guide company that's totally run by women. They're women Sherpas, which are like the porters, women horse riders. They're one of the most successful companies in Ladakh, and it's 26 women. So she's the other side of that, you know, just how important we are as stakeholders. And at no point will you hear any of these women be like, I am a woman, hear me roar, because they don't even say that.
At daybreak.
So then we go from this race in Ladakh to Switzerland. And Switzerland is 125 miles. It is in the Alps, so it's brutal. And in Switzerland, it was a whole nother idea. The idea was more about age, because the women were in the 40s and 50s. By a lot of accounts, probably you're thinking life is just winding down, and they're thinking, hey, we're just starting a new chapter. Both of the women we profiled in Switzerland, the Swiss woman and the woman I'm about to show you, were professional athletes at one point in their life. You can't be a professional athlete forever. You know, so their story is how you change, you know, as we get older. So do we have time to show one more? Okay. So what you're going to see here is Anka, who's one of the women you'll see in our film. Emily, I'll have you.
It feels like another dream. People sharing.
No, it's the next link. No, you know, pull that different. That one, that's it. This one, okay.
Can you turn the sound down just a little bit so it doesn't distort?
Just make it like this. It's gonna have to load, I think. So, while it's loading, I'll just finish up and we'll finish with that. So basically with Anka, we got really lucky. There was 135 people in this race. 36 people finished. 5 women finished. 3 of those women were professional athletes. And the scrubs at the back of the pack were myself and Anka. And hopefully you'll be able to see this video. Hopefully it will load before we have to leave. But again, her story was one of just absolute resilience and courage that I'm just going to keep hanging on until this race is over, which is a lot like life. If you just hang on long enough, you will get through it. And I think that's a message that's so often lost. I know as a journalist, I write a lot of things that are not pleasant. I just had a front page story in the New York Times this month, and it wasn't a very happy story. Did it need to be told? Absolutely. But is it something that's going to make you very excited about life? Probably not. And I think that we, as people should hear the more positive side. We should be reminded of how great it is to be alive. And that's the whole idea behind this film. So we've done a race in Nepal, in India, Switzerland, and now we are planning a 200-mile race in September in the Rockies. And I'm still looking at the women we're going to profile in that race. So that's, 200 miles is pretty terrifying, actually. I'm thoroughly scared of 200 miles, but I know somehow, between now and September, we're going to do that. And it's not just running 200 miles. The budget for this film is roughly $250,000. So that's a lot of money that we have to raise between now and then. And I know, as sure as I stand here, that we're going to do that. Right now, our first goal is a $50,000 goal so we can continue filming. We're actually going back to the Alps to get a deeper story from the woman who lives there and back to the Himalayas. Because there's only so much you can do in the period of time we had to shoot these races and then trying to get the story from the women who live there. And this is why I wanted to bring this message to my family at Rotary. It's because you helped me every step of this journey. You helped me when I was in high school. You got me to India. That got me an awesome career that I love, and I thank God every day. I might be broke, but man, I love my job. I'm not going to have kids till I'm 40, but that's okay. Because it is a community. This is a community film, and it will take all of our community, our global community at Rotary, Rotary International, and people all over the place who believe in this idea. A component of what we're doing at Women of the Mountain is I think I've spoken at 6 schools in the last week, everywhere from the University of Missouri to Missouri School in DC. And so we want to start this journey now. We want to include the community, obviously for fundraising purposes, but also for speaking purposes. We want to engage young people as much as possible because oftentimes you hand a kid a film, but they don't know the process it took to actually get that film produced and made. So as much as we can engage, we want to do that. And I will be passing out my business cards, so please contact me. And again, it's an open invitation if it's your company, if it's your family, if it's as a club. We are a 501c3. We're actually an LLC, but we are working with a fiscal sponsor, so everything's a tax write-off. And you will certainly see your name in the film for support. So let's see if this is loaded, and then we'll pay attention to them. I also want to say thanks for coming, since it didn't really count today. That was quite courageous and resilient that you still came.
Well, there's not much going on at 7 o'clock on Thursday.
Actually, sleep is a great thing that's going on at 7 o'clock. I did tell myself, that's okay, I can go back to sleep at about 8:30. If it doesn't load, it's okay, because I can, if you email me, I will send, I have all of this in an email with links. But does anyone have any questions about the film or where we're going?
Rebecca, what's the process of starting it in through the Rockies? Like, are you going to run just the Denver range or the Colorado range, or where is that going to take place?
So it's the Tahoe. It's called the Tahoe 200. It's actually in Nevada, so it starts September 5th, and we've got 4 days, which seems like a lot, That's really not. And so right now, it's really just getting that production team together and making sure that we've had a very high level of success for just having a good production quality, which doesn't just happen. So that's where we are right now. I think that we'll have the local woman will be a Native American woman because they've known the mountains the longest, and she'll introduce the film. You'll hear her voice throughout the film when it's completed. We have already been selected to be the feature film for Trails in Motion, which is a documentary film festival that's held in South Africa, the United States, and Canada. So we have already been selected for that for 2015, which is great. And again, we're just always open to talk at any place. Even when I'm in India, I'm always available via Skype to connect.
So what is it, do you sleep when you're out there? If you're running 200 miles?
I wish you could see this one, because I don't sleep. Like this race in Switzerland, I had totally planned. Who's gonna think I'm gonna run 125 miles with no sleep? But again, that's why only 36 people finished out of 135, because the time cutoffs were so hard that if you stopped, unless you were a super elite runner, which I'm not, unless you were really fast, you just couldn't stop. So I did not sleep, Howard, at all for 55 hours and 15 minutes. And I was seeing Chevrolet spinning on the side of the mountain. And I was seeing this lady in a pink jumpsuit with a dog. She didn't really exist. But all of those things were happening at 25 hours with no sleep. So 55 hours is pretty ugly. You just have to keep looking straight. And and it's brutal because the courses aren't very well marked, so you might get lost. We did get lost for a while. But that's when that resilience kicks in. You're like, I'm going to find my way back. I'm not going to quit. It's farther to just quit and walk back than it is to keep going forward. People would quit on the trail and they would throw their poles down and be like, I'm done. And be like, well, where are you going to go now?
Rebecca, I've followed you since high school. I heard someone say once that everything is hard until you make it easy. Just break it up in little pieces. $250,000 for 200 miles. That's only $1,250 a mile.
You're good for one, aren't you, John?
You break it down, it's less than a quarter a foot.
Yeah.
I like that.
So,
I haven't even, so it's $1,250?
sometimes I have to check my math, but really, you break things down,
So that's what we need, and I'm letting you know, this is what we need to move forward with our film, and in any way that, we can give back, we absolutely will. Because we want this to be a film that, it's not just about the empowerment of women, it's everybody, it's all people. So, any companies that may want to be involved in that, fantastic.
Talking about empowerment of women, what criteria do you use to select the women that actually introduces your movie and finishes that? Is that women who have already been through hardships and made it out of it, or is this women who are just coming out of hardship and need to be encouraged? What are the criteria?
Both. So in Ladakh, the woman is 32. She's got this business that is employing 26 women, but every single day is a struggle. It is a struggle to keep her business going. You're working with people who have a very low level of literacy. So it's real, and she herself has a relatively low literacy level, just because of the default of where she was born. So it's a tremendous struggle for her, thinless still. The woman in Switzerland, she's in her 50s and she's more on her way. She's now looking at, my kids are grown, and she was an Olympic cross country. She was on the first team of women who competed in the 84 and 88 Olympics on the women's cross country team. And she went from there to saying, hey, I'm ready to be a wife and a mom, which is great. We want to say there's nothing wrong with that. Fantastic. And so she started her own business in Pontresina, Switzerland, where she grew up. And now she's ready to kick back a bit. So you'll see all sides, you know, because women, it's a reflection of reality. So you'll see in the middle of, but we're always kind of in the struggle, right? I mean, it's just different. It's just a different degree.
Your friend Aparna, you know, she had a hard time looking at the camera and head down and all that, like you were talking about. Obviously, you didn't show a lot of that, but how did she get to the point where she could even think about entering that race? What support did she have behind her to help her, or how did she garner her support? What was her background?
Well, she works in IT. Only one person in her family who's ever thought about exercise. And it was just that, like, I did a 5K, and then I did a half marathon, and then, oh my God, I just did a marathon. And that little bit of piece by piece by piece, and to tell someone you're going to run 135 miles at 18,000 feet, it's crazy. And she had one person who believed in her, and that was her crew chief. He was it. It was just him. And she somehow raised the money, you know, to get there from her community. And that was part of why she had to finish, was like, so many people believe in me, and if I don't do this, it's gonna be so much harder for the next person after me to do this. So that's really where it came from, just that courageous spirit and that resilience.
Can I make, I just want to make a statement. I know I served on the scholarship committee as the buster. It's probably one of the most, the best experiences in Rotary that I've ever had, to be able to choose scholars like Rebecca. And I want to remind you that Kieran Colley Dickerson, who is the Teacher of the Year in North Carolina, also was an ambassadorial scholarship. You've seen her in the news lately. So this is the caliber of what Rotary does.
And
so we should really be proud of these young people.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity.
She said she's got her business cards. I'm sure she's happy to answer any questions afterwards. Did we do a raffle today?
Chip won.
Chip won. He was right. He's the only one who
I
donated back to
Rotary. All right. Don't forget the card fund on the table. All right.
Chip, you have to
All right.